I'm ready.
Okay, Intel folks, are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Welcome. So let's go ahead and get started with our event. I know we're going to have some more candidates that trickle in as we go along this evening. So I wanted to go ahead and get started so that you guys know that you're in the right place. This evening, we will be presenting Intel and some great opportunities and some great team members that have volunteered their time to share those opportunities, but not only share their opportunities, but also to introduce themselves, what they do at Intel, and a little bit more about the culture. So we're gonna have a great event. So it's gonna be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. So feel free, like I said, if you're jumping on to the event and you're a candidate, feel free to leverage the chat to drop an introduction, introduce yourself, ask questions in the chat, network with other candidates and also with the Intel team. So not only do we have presenters from Intel that are going to share their experiences, they're going to have their video on, and we're going to do like a panel discussion and have a great agenda, but there are also Intel recruiters on the call as well to help answer your questions as we go. So if a question comes up and you'd like to ask that question in the chat, go ahead and ask that question in the chat, but then we'll also have a live Q&A as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our event, which is a part 2 of our 3-part series introducing logic technology development and manufacturing within Intel. So first thing I like to do is go over our agenda so that I can sort of set expectations. You guys will know what we're going to cover this evening and also the opportunity for you. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a brief welcome, introducing myself, HBCU Connect, and talk a little bit about our partnership with Intel. Then I am going to introduce our keynote speaker, who's going to speak for roughly 15 minutes, share some insight and an overview of Intel and also a little bit about herself. Then after introducing our keynote, then we're going to go into introducing our panelists for a live panel discussion. So we've got 3 panelists. I'll allow them to introduce themselves so that you kind of have some context on who from the Intel team is here, what they do at Intel, their path to Intel, and what they like most about Intel. And then we will get into that panel discussion and an opportunity for you all to ask questions live. So in the panel discussion, I have some questions that I have queued up to ask to the panelists to give you guys a better idea of the Intel culture and also to be an advocate for US candidates. And then you all can also, once we get into that panel discussion, you guys can pose questions in the chat that I can read off to our panelists live so that we can get some really good insight. Then once we finish up with our panel discussion and live Q&A and get your questions answered, then we will go into a thank you and next steps. So basically, once you learn more about these opportunities with Intel, what are the next steps for you to land an opportunity or an interview for a potential job at Intel? So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to pass it over to Josetta at that point. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the agenda. So what I like to do at these events is give you guys a little bit of background on who we are, because not everyone that comes to our events have already previously attended an event with HBCU Connect. And maybe this is your first time interfacing with HBCU Connect and Intel. And our organization, HBCU Connect, we're all about providing opportunities not only to students and graduates from historically Black colleges and universities, but also the wider audience of professional African-American and Latinx candidates that are out there that are looking to connect with great opportunities with different companies. So we've been around since 1999. We forged a relationship with Intel probably about 10 years ago, helping out mostly with their university recruitment. But as Intel got more familiar with HBCU Connect and our audience, they realized that we had a 90% alumni audience. And they said, why don't we use HBCU Connect to connect with more graduates and professionals? And we got connected and started to host recruitment events all over the country in physical locations like Dallas, Texas, Houston, Atlanta, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Had some successful events and lots of people got hired from those events by Intel, right? So the opportunity for you this evening, in lieu of us having those events physically, we're going to have this event virtually, but we still want the same outcome. And that is for you guys to learn more about Intel to get excited about their opportunities to interface and network with the team members here at Intel at this event, and then hopefully land an interview and a career, like a dream career, a dream job opportunity for you. So we invite you to network, to learn more, take some notes, and connect with the Intel team. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our keynote speaker, and after our keynote speaker, our individual panelists. So Lois, if you're ready, let me introduce you and give folks a little bit of background about you.
I think you're muted.
You want to mute Will?
I'm sorry, Lois. I just wanted to introduce you and see if you're ready to go.
Okay. I can go to the other slide. Okay. So thank you everyone for joining. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of some of our career opportunities that are available in our Logic and Technology Development Group. And I also give you a little bit of background about myself. So I'll start off with that. So next slide. So I was born in Zimbabwe and I grew up in Zimbabwe all the way up until high school. And so Zimbabwe is a small country located in the southern part of Africa. It's a landlocked country. And while I was in high school, it was not only up until probably the last 6 months of my high school, that's when I was introduced to the idea of possibly attending school outside of Zimbabwe. And it was through a program called USAP. And for me, being a first generation college, this was very important because I really didn't have someone at home who would guide me or help me navigate sort of going to college. So this program was very important in sort of shaping and paving a path for me to go to college. And it was through this program that I was able to go to college, and I applied to 3 schools, and I decided to go to MIT. So that's where I completed my undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. And while I was in undergrad, I was really interested. I started doing research very early on, and it really got me interested in working on problems that you don't really know the answer to, and working on different innovations. And it was really through the mentors that I have with graduate students that motivated me to go to graduate school. So I decided that I wanted to go pursue a PhD, and part of the reason is because I wanted to sort of hone my skills in being able to tackle difficult problems that I thought would have an impact on society. At that time when I was in undergrad, I worked on on problems that were mostly like looking at research that had medical applications. So I thought it was something that would you actually see have a positive impact on people. So I then moved from Boston to the Southeast to Atlanta, where I attended Georgia Tech for my PhD. I also did my PhD in chemical engineering, and I graduated in 2015. And so as I was coming close to graduating and I was looking at what I wanted to do after I finished school, and I explored different industry and different companies. Intel was not something that I'd initially thought of, and mostly it was because I just had assumed that it was mostly for electrical engineers and computer science. So it wasn't until when Intel came on campus and they had a seminar that I attended that I then saw that it was more than just what I thought electrical would be mostly for electrical engineering and computer science, and that there were opportunities for students from different degrees and different fields because of the problems that they're looking at. They're really looking at students that are coming from different STEM degrees. And that's how I ended up at Intel. So I moved from Atlanta to Oregon. Prior to this, I didn't even really know anything about Oregon, but when I first arrived to Oregon, I was really just fascinated by just how green it was and how much outdoor stuff you can actually do. So at Intel, I started in November 2015. So I've been at Intel for about 6 years now. And I started off as a process engineer. And so that's the role I'm currently in. And as a process engineer, initially I was working in a module where we are mostly doing sustaining, which is really looking at how do we keep our tools running on a mature technology. And then I've moved to different groups, all that are within WEDH, the WEDH module, which I work in. And in these groups, I worked on doing process development, where you're looking at how do you actually develop your process from, once you have the design, how do you develop the process to make our transistor? Working also on our tool sets. These are the tool sets that are used to make the microchip. So I was working in what we call our fabs, which are clean room facilities. And then we work, once our processes are mature, we then transfer them for high volume manufacturing. So our goal is really to ensure that we have a process that actually yields and we can actually use it to make our products, and then it is manufacturable so that we can transfer it for high volume manufacturing. So I recently then moved into a managerial role where I now manage a team of process engineers. So I've been in this role for about 6 months. So now I'm learning more about how to manage talent and how to manage a team of engineers. So throughout this journey, there's some things that I've taken out of that from my experience for the past 6 years, which really include that I've realized that you continue to learn once you're outside of school. So you don't really feel limited by the degree that you studied in school. You still have opportunities to expand both your breadth and your depth and expand into different fields. And what's very important is for you to be passionate about what you do and be excited of the work that you're doing, as that will help you to be motivated and to be successful. And also importantly is to seek a balance between your work, your life, and your interests. And for me, I enjoy traveling, which unfortunately don't get to do as much due to COVID, but I look forward to being able to pick that up in the future. Reading, I enjoy hiking. Hiking is something that I picked up when I moved to the Pacific Northwest, and running. But one of the things that's very important to me is mentoring. And mostly because of just looking at my career journey and all the people the mentors and people that have helped me, I think it's a very important thing. So, and something that I encourage people to be mentored and also be a mentor. And I'm involved with the Minds Matter Portland, where I mentor high school students. I've done this for over 4 years, and my students that I mentored them since they were sophomores all the way through to their senior year, and now they just started college this year. So it's really exciting to see them grow throughout their journey and now going off to college. So, thank you. Next. So now delve more into a brief overview about Intel. So at Intel, our main goal and purpose is to create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. And when we say that, really what we mean is really looking at our technology and the impact that is having on everyone. So Intel started off, as a PC-centric company, but now we have expanded our depth and our breadth, and transforming the way in which the world really uses data, the way the data is computed, the way data is stored and acquired and processed. And all this is driven by Moore's law. So Moore's law came from Gordon Moore, who is one of the co-founders of Intel. And in this, what his idea was that was on the transistor innovation, where we were looking at, he coined that every 2 years, the number of transistors would double. And in that, he was really looking at how we were going to continue to transform and increase our computing power to where we are now to date. So with all this innovation, now Intel is at a position where we are powering the digital disruption, and we are playing a very critical role in these 4 key pillars, which our CEO refers to our 4 superpowers, which include cloud computing, 5G connectivity, AI, which is now in a lot of things, and intelligent edge, looking at how data is used and how data is processed. Next slide. But with all this innovation, what really is very critical are our people. So our talent is really at the heart of everything that we do. And all of this really is modeled and embedded in our Intel values. So when you look at our Intel values, we ensure that we are making our high quality products for our customers. So we're really focused on our customers, and we ensure that we do all the way we do business models, truth and transparency. And then we are really focused on our talent, ensuring that we are an inclusive culture and we foster innovation through a fearless culture where people are able to take risks that enable our technological innovation. And we're able to do all this while working together as a team through One Intel. So for Intel, well, I've talked about our technological innovation and how we are a leader in the silicon technology, but it's not just about that. We also want to ensure that we are also leading in addressing some of the global diversity, inclusion, and social issues. So, and in order for us to do this, Intel has set out to make very intentional goals and ensuring that we're able to achieve these goals. These include looking at, how are we being inclusive and ensuring inclusive leadership and accountability. And the way that we have tackled this problem is by setting very specific goals. We understand that in order for us to be inclusive, we need to ensure that we do have a representative population. So Intel set out a goal to ensure full market representation, and we were able to achieve this goal in the US workforce in 2018, which was 2 years earlier from the goal, which was actually 2020. But we're not just stopping there. Going forward, we have our 2030 RISE goals, where we're really focused on continuing our leadership in corporate responsibility and also sustainability. And with this, we're looking at how we're being a responsible company in ensuring that we are ensuring safety for our people and also for the environment. Then we're ensuring that we are inclusive and that our technology is sustainable. And so this is a continued work in order for us to be able to continue to work on reducing our carbon footprint. And with all this, ensuring that our technology is enabling like the way I alluded to, that our technology should have a positive impact on everyone on Earth. And with this, then we're also looking at how do we really integrate all our efforts with our culture and the way we do business by ensuring that we're really all our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are actually embedded in our culture and the way we do business on a day-to-day. And one of the ways that we have been able to do this is by intentionally also investing in areas where we can continue to drive diversity and inclusion. And one of those goals was when Intel set out to ensure that we're also investing in diverse-owned suppliers, and we're able to achieve a goal of spending $1 billion every year on diverse-owned suppliers. And with all this, then we're also looking at how do we continue to not only lead within our company, but also externally by addressing some of the social issues, including the gender pay gap. We all are aware that women are often paid less than men for the same job that they do. So Intel set out a goal to ensure that we're able to achieve a gender pay equity across all our global workforce. And this was achieved in 2019. And we're excited to see all the other initiatives that will come. So now I'll shift gears and talk a little bit about our LTD group here located in Portland. So I've put this slide here just to show you part of our campus and also some of our group outings, which we do look forward to be able to go back to after COVID. So in our logic and technology development group, our engineers, we are working on our silicon technology. So that's why, here in Oregon, we are known as the Silicon Forest. And the idea there is for us to be able to conceptualize new architectures and then realize them in silicon to make the most advanced silicon products for our customers. And we achieve this through our multidisciplinary teams that work together in order for us to be able to continue to be innovative. So I've listed down here some of the different teams just to show you sort of the diverse talent that we are looking at for our LTD group. We have people who are working on the design. So here, which is mostly comprises of electrical engineers, but is not limited to just electrical engineers. We're looking at the chip layouts. And then we have our maths group, which are looking at printing, where we also have people who are working on computation, working on how to tackle, the key problems that you continue to have is you continue to shrink the transistors, you get new challenges, and that's why we also need diverse talent as well to ensure that we are able to continue to be innovative. Then we have engineers that work on the process, they're developing the process, taking the design into a product, and then scaling it up to manufacturing. And then we have our packaging group that brings it all together into an Intel product. So I'll just talk briefly about, so this is the role that I started off in as a fab process engineer. So our fab process engineers, these are individuals that are really passionate about instrumentation. They work in our fabs where they are working on developing our tool sets. They develop the process for making the transistor, and their goal is to ensure that we develop a process that is profitable and that is manufacturable. And once our process is mature, we are then able to transfer our process from our Oregon site, which is the development site, to all our high volume manufacturing sites. And I've posted here some of the job breaks just to show you that we are currently hiring, but our job breaks are of course not limited to this slide that I've shown here. And I will just end on this slide. This is just to show you just some of the beautiful parts of the Pacific Northwest. And thank you very much for your time.
Lois, excellent keynote. Appreciate you being our keynote. I would love to follow up with a couple of questions for you. So I noticed you said you were in Atlanta previously.
Yes.
So what was it like, when you relocated? How did you get situated? Were you a part of any of the Intel ERG groups? And then what did you like most about that relocation to the Pacific Northwest?
So when I moved from Atlanta to the Pacific Northwest, so the good thing is actually that Georgia Tech, there were a lot of Georgia Tech alumni, which actually included some of my friends. Okay. So, and we do have a huge alumni presence here at Intel. So that helped me a lot with the transition. Okay. It was a bit of a culture shock. It's a very different culture and environment compared to the Southeast. So I think having that network of alumni definitely did help me with that transition.
Awesome. And what is it that you like most so far about working at Intel?
I really enjoy the challenges and so the opportunities that you get, right? So I've been at Intel for 6 years and I've worked on different aspects which have helped me to sort of explore my interests. So I like that, the opportunities are limitless. It's really all about what you are interested in doing and what you like to work on.
I think that's awesome. Now, one of the other questions I like to ask, just to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty for the candidates, can you give us sort of a day in the life for you and the members of your team?
Wow. Yeah, the days are always very different. So it's always quite tough for me to know how the days are. But I'll give you typically, so now because I've also transitioned right from my process engineering job to a managerial job. So for me, it's a mix of both. Sometimes I am really helping my engineers either with some of their career questions or helping them with some of the problems. And then sometimes we're putting out fires, right? We're in the fab. Sometimes, you wake up and then you see that, all your tools are down and you have to figure out how to get everything back up and running again. So it's always interesting and a little bit different on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent, excellent. So let me thank you for being our keynote and ask you to hang on for our panel discussion a little bit later. But
thank you.
Yep, with that, I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists. So in this section of the event, I'm going to introduce each of our panelists one by one, and starting with Jack Hwang. So Jack is a principal engineer in Intel's Logic Technology and Development Group. So Jack, if you're ready.
Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Taiwan, and my parents immigrated to the U.S. back in 1966 when my father was a graduate student at Kansas State. And so I grew up in the U.S. and so when I went to college at UC Berkeley, I started out as a physics major. And I think most of my friends were physicists. But, one thing that kept nagging me is I wanted to do science that had applications. I like science that can change the world. And so what I did my last year as an undergrad is I changed from physics to chemie, because I looked at the graduate school and said, hey, that's really what I wanted to do, is applied science. And so I got my degree in chemical engineering from Berkeley. And then I went to Caltech as a graduate student in also the chemical engineering program. So when I graduated, one of the things that attracted me at Intel is that, what's exciting is when you come here, you develop the chips, and, it's nice that you have your handiwork, you develop this new transistor, and it's actually in every computer, on the planet. And so, we talk about, the impact in the world. And I think it's been a privilege for me, because this is.
Oops, sorry about that. I think we.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So I think, what's amazing for me is it's been, this is year 28. And I started out, we converted from the VAX to PCs for people's desks. And to see this technology grow from, just a PC, which is a tool, to something that's really part of everybody's life today. And so, I think it's been, an amazing journey for me.
Can you talk a little bit about what a day in the life is like for you as a principal engineer?
Okay. So I manage the wet etch group at Intel. And so, what I do is I think a large part of what I do these days is, I'm actually the hiring champion for my whole division, logic technology development. So this place, we have, 5,000, PhD engineers. And so right now we're in a growth phase where, if you read the news, there's chip shortages everywhere. Every single company is trying to expand. Mm-hmm. And so for this period of time, a large portion of my time is actually spent coordinating and working with our hiring, talent managers for all the campus visits. So that's a big part of my job now, is to try to figure out how to grow the organization and find the right talent. And I think what I, and I do have a passion for this, because I think what's exciting is that, through my work, I interact with a lot of students, and I don't necessarily hire all of them, because, I look at my role, I have so much experience, because I've been doing this for 10 years, almost 10 years, and I've hired thousands. So I look at a resume, I can tell more about the candidates than they would actually understand from themselves. And I can say, looking at this is your passion, correct? And they'll say, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. And since I know everybody at Intel, I try to match people up. It's like, okay, based on this background, I know this person from such and such an org. And so I'm probably one of the most experienced people when it comes to pairing up candidates with the talent. And I'm always happy to help mentor people, give people feedback, and at least steer them, to the right, career path they want.
So can I ask a follow-up question then related to that, around advice that you would give candidates for getting their foot in the door at Intel. So we've got a lot of professionals that have been out in the workforce for a while that have joined us that have engineering backgrounds in the various disciplines. What would be your advice for them to get their foot in the door?
Well, I'd say, for the people here today, I'm going to type my email address, in the chat. So you can feel free if you want to send me a resume, you have questions, I'm more than happy to give some feedback. So that's like step number one. I'm probably one of the main conduits, for the talent pipeline, within my division. All right. So number two, now when you're interviewing for a job, I tell people, I look at the resume. I want to find out, well, what drives you? What excites you? And it's really, for me, if I can find someone and pair them up with the right job, and they're passionate about it, I want everyone to come to Intel and come and say, wow, this is my dream job. If you come with that mindset, we all win, right? And so, you look at your own resume and figure out, well, what we do might not match up with what you do today, but where do you want to go? Where, what do you want to be, right? And that's really the question I'm going to ask you. And I'm also pretty good at looking at your background and say, I'll bet you this would be a good pair. It might be different than what you did, but based on your abstract skills,
Yep.
that's really, when I can make it click, I think it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Right. And I've paired up a lot of people this way, and they come back to me and say, wow, this, like, I never would have imagined that this would have been the job that would fit me, because I knew nothing about it, but this is awesome. I love it.
I think that's awesome. And to your point that you just mentioned, I noticed that you have a PhD in chemical engineering. And so I have a background in software engineering, for example. And so when I think of Intel and I think of chip technology, I don't automatically think of chemical engineers, but I know we have a lot of chemical engineers that are in process engineering that are on the call today. So tell us a little bit about how, the different engineering disciplines can fit into Intel.
Okay, so like, for instance, chemical engineering, you think about what we do with chips. We're turning sand into a computer chip.
Yeah.
It's all chemistry.
Okay.
Right. So I think chemists really drive the chip making process.
Okay.
And as chemical engineers, you understand how reactors work, because every single process tool is a reactor. So I think that's a good matchup, for chemical engineering is a great field. And if you come in, you'll feel exactly at home, because you might work on a reactor at an oil plant, but the reactor in a etch chamber is exactly the same way, and you view things, analogously. So that would be for the chemical engineers. You look at, we have two sections of the flow. We have the front end, which is a transistor, and the back end, the interconnect. So for material scientists, they're interested in metallurgy, grain boundary sizes, and as we shrink these lines, copper is our conductor, but copper goes everywhere. So we have to find a case, something to encapsulate it.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're actually marching through the periodic table, looking at the, metallurgical combinations that can give us a better barrier material. So that's material science.
Yep.
You go to chemistry, wet etch is a great place, because I hire primarily organic or synthetic chemists, because that is wet etch, right? We're coming up with novel chemistries all the time to figure out how to etch. And as I said, from the back end, where you have new metals, new things, well, then how do you etch it, right? So then you have to go to your phase diagrams, right? So that's the wet chemists, right? Then you have your electrical engineers, which, who do the device analysis. That's the EE. Then mechanical, a lot of, robotics, tool, wafer handling, but also, for, the type of testing they do, it's similar to some of the failure analysis. So that's good for mechanical. So I can go on, and I can give you an example where I make connections. I interviewed someone who worked on the Higgs boson at CERN. And I said, what do you do? He says, well, I do software. I analyze petabytes worth of data to look at the particle tracks, when they were looking for the Higgs boson. And I said, how am I going to use this?
Right.
And then I said, hey, wait a minute, our defect group. So, what the defect group is, they scan the wafer, and they're trying to figure out what are the predominant defects on the wafer. And 10 years ago, we used to have a human that would actually look at the data and say, okay, here's a block via, here's some structure. And they would say, this is code number 1, 2, 3. Today, the data set is like a petabyte. It's so big, no human can look at it anymore. So now, I pair that person up and the defect group says, wow, that's an amazing combination. So so that's why, whenever I can find these synergies, and I found lots of them for completely different areas, but when you can make that matching, you say, wow, that's pretty cool.
Can you loop in the software engineers? And it may be a little bit more obvious to me as a software engineer and to some of the software engineers on the call, but we have a lot of them with us. So I think that'd be cool as well.
Well, think about it this way. Our entire factory, it's all automated, right? So we have, first off, you have factory automation. That's number one. For the data that comes out of the factory, you're talking bazillion amounts of data. And, and you talk about the theme of data these days is that we only utilize only a few % of this data stream that comes out. In our factory, we generate, amazing amount of data. And having software people come in, the data scientists, to mine that, if you can find 2% efficiency improvement, our plant costs $15 billion, 2% of 15 billion. Everything you do that squeezes out a % or two is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So there's opportunities to mine vast amounts of data from the tools, from the factory efficiency, operations. In fact, also, industrial operations, people figuring out how to, flow the flow of wafers. That also is good. So you got the tool software side. Then you have the, also tool control. So how to control the tools better, the control mechanisms, the algorithms, and how we, have feedback. So the whole factory is software.
Awesome. So I know our candidates are probably going to have some questions for you and Lois in the chat. So to our candidates, if you have questions for Jack or Lois so far, as we're introducing our panelists, feel free to drop those questions in the chat. And then Jack and Lois, if you can keep an eye on the chat for any questions that you can answer. But that's some awesome insight. And thanks for being one of our panelists, Jack.
Actually, can you do me a favor and type my email address into the chat? Because my C does not work on my laptop.
No problem.
It's struggling. So it's jack.hwang@intel.com. So it's just my name with a period in between at intel.com.
The plug. There it is, jack.hwang@intel.com. I just dropped it in the chat. So anybody that wants to network with Jack, there it is. So thank you for being one of our panelists, and thank you to Lois again for being our keynote. Let me go ahead and introduce our next, and if you guys can hang on for our panel discussion, that'd be great. So let me introduce our next speaker, who's going to be Marcus Pefra, who's etch process engineer. So Marcus, if you are ready.
Yeah, I am. Thanks, Will. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
All right. Yeah, and thanks to everyone for showing up for this event. My journey to Intel started in Ghana. I'm originally from Ghana. I did general science in Ghana. Growing up, I've always also been very interested in trying to make a difference in terms of in the sciences. When like every child, I would say most children in Ghana, the most professions, or maybe in Africa, is being a doctor, a lawyer. So that had always been like, oh, you want to be a doctor? But in high school, one of my teachers, a mathematician, he saw my mathematical prowess and my physics, and he was like, hey, once, I know people want to be doctors, but there's other professions like electrical engineering, where you could actually make a very huge difference. My dad actually was an industrial chemist, and my mom is a tree geneticist. So he was like, yeah, use your math, and your physics to move into that direction. So after high school, I started a bit in the Science and Technology University in Ghana as an electrical engineer. And that's when I met some friends where we are all interested in trying to find opportunities in the US. So we applied to a bunch of schools for undergrad. And I ended up all the way in Portland in a small liberal arts school, Reed College, which was basically, since the liberal art, they don't really do electrical engineering. So it's basically like a hit and a reset. And since I'm very good I'm good in physics and mathematics, when I moved here, it was also an opportunity for me to have a different type of education. Basically, back home, it's basically all science, but here at Reed, I had to do, even though I was doing physics, I was learning other areas like arts. I did, economics and all of those disciplines. So that kind of opened my eye that, hey, there's a lot that you can do. And basically, university is basically a place for you to learn how to study. So after Reed, I went to University of Florida. My initial goal was basically to go in and do a biomedical engineering, but that changed along the way, and I decided to focus on basically physics and studying the properties of materials. So I mainly focused on magnetic materials. Graduated in 2015. Then, during the job search, I knew that I didn't want to stay in academia because I did a lot of teaching at UF. And seeing as my interest was trying to make a difference in basically trying to make products or something that would be applicable, I decided to search the industry. So I was looking for jobs. I applied to GE and other companies, but I also, through my networking with my friends, one of my friends connected me to Jack. And one early morning, I was about, on a Saturday, I was about to head to my lab, and Jack called me, which was an Oregon number. I was like, who's calling me from Oregon? I knew I had Oregon links because that's where I was before. I was like, wait, who's calling from Oregon? So, all right, let me just pick it, and it was Jack. So we had a discussion of what you do, and I was telling him, I'm actually even going into the lab right now, and I work on a squid. Basically, I make equipment for the squid, and I also use it. So it's kind of lined up with, what we do basically as a sustaining engineer or a tool engineer at Intel. Then he gave me an opportunity to come and interview on site. And from there, that's basically how I ended up at Intel. My job basically at Intel as a process. So basically I've moved from physics to wet edge, which is, completely different from what I did. But as a physicist, my job basically was, to try and probe whatever is put in front of me. That's basically what my advisor was like. I know you're doing physics and all of that, but what I want you to be able to do is that when you get out of here and you're given any problem, right, you'll be able to pick it up and dissect it and be not cynical, but ask questions about it and try and figure it out. So, when I got wet edge, initially I was like, well, I did physics, but hey, it's chemistry. But let's see what we can do with it. So as a wet edge engineer or process engineer, I started as a sustaining, similar to Lois, where my job was basically to own an equipment that is used in the semiconductor processing. And the role is basically to make sure that it's running efficiently. There are no issues. And if there are issues, basically you try and fix it and get it to work basically 24/7, 365 days a year. And along the way, I became like a process, basically to learn the process also. So now my job basically deals with working with our integration and design team. They will come up with, the process of how the device is supposed to be made. And as a wet edge engineer, I need to get a clear problem statement from them for me in terms of what cleans we need at that particular step of the process. And in that vein, what I do is, to get that problem from them in terms of, making it clear and concise. because what we want is that, like, my colleagues have described, if as the technology gets develops over time with each node, the complexity goes even higher, right? Because we are shrinking these transistors, we are shrinking our interconnects, and with each node, our main problems are defects. So you want to make sure that you'll be able to find solutions to these problems. So once I get that, my other job is to work with the chemical vendors, right? Hey, this is what I want. These are the problems I have. Can you give me a chemistry that will be able to accomplish ABCD without adding extra problems to it? So I collaborate with my chemical vendors in coming up with a unique chemical that would basically be a solution to the problem. Now, once we get that, the other part of my job is basically to interact with an equipment vendor. So we go with my vendor should be able to, equipment vendor should be able to say, okay, I can give you equipment that will be able to run this chemistry and be able to fix the problems that you are looking for, right? To increase yield and all of that. So that is basically my day-to-day work at Intel. I've moved from being a sustaining. I would say sustaining is basically about 30% of my job right now. My focus is basically now to work with my chemical vendors and the tool vendors to come up with solutions that will be tractable and to help with each process node that we are developing. So that's basically a little bit of my journey to Intel.
So let me get this straight. So Jack actually recruited you to Intel?
Yeah.
I think that's a cool story. So what was it like? So I'm thinking, putting my candidate hat on, right? What was it like for you when you interviewed at Intel? What was the interview experience like?
I had some friends who had interviewed at Intel, so they gave me a gist of it. It was basically, we had a technical interview where I met with a couple of managers, and they basically went through my technical skills, what I've done in grad school. The whole idea is for me to be able to communicate what you did clearly, because when you do a PhD, you are only doing just a minuscule part of the knowledge base, right? And you should be able to explain it to the layman, to be able to understand that, okay, what you did is applicable, or to be able to understand it. So that was part of the technical part of my interview, but there was also the part where you needed to, your human skills, human interactions with people, and ability to work in a group. So that was, all of that came together to give me like, okay, it was a good interview process, but yeah, that was basically what it was like.
I think that's awesome. And I just saw a comment from Lois that Jack recruited Lois as well. Jack, do you remember how you found Lois and Marcus?
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember, so part of what I do when I visit the campuses is I visit a lot of the labs. And so, I've been networking, I used to be on the ground. So I travel to 45 schools a year. And so I literally went everywhere. And so, I think what's amazing is I love the connections I've made. This is why I think hiring has been so rewarding for me, is, all the amazing people that I've interacted and seeing them develop, and part of it is that, being a senior person, I try to, encourage the people I hire, come seek me out. I can, give, I'm more than happy to mentor, any of the engineers, which actually is a big chunk of the department.
I think that's awesome. So Marcus, let me follow up with one more question for you. And that is, based on your story and how you, connected with Jack, and then you, went out for the interview process, did you have an impression of Intel that was different, like before you were hired and then after you were hired? Like, what have been your impressions like, with Intel?
Before I was hired, of course, that I thought Intel, like everyone else, they needed only electrical engineering. So it was as a physicist, I was like, wait, what, I know I can apply it, but what would I really be doing? Because I'm a hard scientist, right? I'm looking at basic science, right? Rather than more of an applicable science. Even though I did condensed matter physics, experimental, but I'm also a tool engineer. Like in grad school, I was just tearing apart our squid and putting it together, trying to make it work. So from that perspective, that was like, will I be able to fit in?
Okay.
And during the interview, that was the message I got from the managers that, hey, we want you. We'll find you something to do. Even if you don't know how to do it, we are going to give you an opportunity for you to be successful and to learn. Yeah. So yeah, so that I know one manager was like, yeah, you did physics, but this is what you'll be able to do for us. So when you come in, we'll train you, even if you don't know it, and from there you should be able to take care of it. So my whole journey here, I'll look at it. And a typical example would be like grad school, right? Once I start in a group in my first year, I'm pretty much not doing much, right? With each year you learn, and by the time you are in your fourth year or in grad school, you should be able to know yourself around the lab or know yourself with whatever you are doing. So it's the same application here that, beginning, you are just a fresh, graduate in this big company. So by now, I'm able to, I don't need to be told what to do all the time, right? I know what the problems are, and I'm supposed to be able to find solutions to it without being a lot of hand-holding.
I think that's awesome. Okay, so to our candidates, let me break this up a little bit. To our candidates, this is a huge opportunity for you to network with Lois, Jack, Marcus, and our next speaker, who's going to be Francis. But they have some really cool experiences that they're willing to share. So if you have questions, make sure to drop them in the chat for our panelists so far. And then when we get to our panel discussion, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, because I'm going to be looking for them to ask to our panelists, because it looks like we have a great opportunity here to get some really good insight based on the experiences that have been shared thus far. So thanks, Marcus, for the introduction, and I'll ask you as well to hang on for our panel discussion. Okay, so let me introduce our next speaker, who is Francis Tambwe, who's a Thin Films pathfinding engineer. So Francis, if you're ready.
Good afternoon to everybody. So I'm Francis Tambwe. I was born in Congo, and I don't know if can you see me? Okay, all right. So I was born in Congo, and then after high school, during that time, my parents were a diplomat, so they were working in Italy. So after finishing high school in Congo, I went to Italy and joined my parents. And I spent a couple of years, learning Italian and doing nearly nothing. And so my parents asked me what I wanted to do. One of my parent friends suggested that I come to the US. That is how I came to the US without speaking English. And so I studied English in Maine. And after 6 months, I decided to enroll to Alabama A&M as an undergrad. That is where I graduated from in physics. And once I graduated, I wanted to do something different, because my parents thought as a physicist, I couldn't earn a living. So I went to graduate school in Wisconsin in material science. So where I graduated and then joined Intel in 2000. And by the way, the time I joined Intel and I joined LTD in Oregon, I think I might be one of the first, you can say, Black engineer at Intel, at the LTD at least. And that was kind of interesting for me. And coming from material science, joined this group that had, they asked me to do polish. So it was what we call CMP, is basically chemical mechanical polishing. And I had no idea what this was all about. So I asked my manager that time, why did you hire me? Because I have no idea what the CMP process means. and what it entails. So then I think the manager was kind enough to tell me that they thought I can solve some technical problems, which was kind of surprising to me. And I say, okay, so you think I can solve some problems? They say, yes, okay, all right, that is fine. And before I joined, I had a few other offers at that time I was thinking about. And so I said, okay, maybe I will just join Intel. I don't know what I'm doing, but it sounds like it's a cool company and they are doing all this Pentium. So it's something worth trying. So I joined Oregon and I spent my first 11 years in the CMP module and everything was progressing nice. And then I got married. I decided to leave Intel. So I went to join a competitor, Global Foundry in New York, where I ended up by just spending 10 months. And then I came back to Intel. That is also a quite interesting experience by itself. And when I rejoined Intel, I started in Phoenix. I was in Arizona in high volume manufacturing. And I spent 3 years there. And then I saw an opportunity in Boise, Idaho, where Intel was doing a joint venture with Micron. So I jumped to that opportunity and I was basically integration lead. So I changed completely my role from a process engineer to an integration. And I spent a month, I spent 2 years with them. During that time, I was doing also an MBA. And so after I got my MBA degree, I thought maybe I need to try to find something else to do with it. So I joined the supply chain group. And I left that group and I came to Portland, Oregon as a supply chain engineer. And I was doing great. I liked that job. I established a lot of relationships because I was working with different suppliers across the world, some of our competitors as well. And then from that point, basically my engineering feeling just kept calling me back. So I talked to some of my old manager in LTD, and they were kind to open the opportunity for me. So I rejoined the group. From that group, then they gave me this a small team. Basically, I work with 2 engineers, and I'm the technical lead. And the job is really basically all the future technology that Intel is looking at. Some of them we need to polish and look at the wafers. And since they don't have the flow yet, they come to me and I have this unique tool. I have 2 tools, by the way, they are so unique. They are configured differently. So I can test different materials, polish different things, and tell them whether it's going to work or not. And so that is basically what I'm doing now. And so outside of work, I just spend time with the kids. My kids are still young, so and play with them. I don't know if there is any question, Will.
always have a couple of questions. I always hear something interesting. And one thing that I heard was that you left, to join a competitor there, and then you went back to Intel. So what is it that brought you back to Intel? What was different? Because that's a question I typically ask: is if anyone has worked at different companies.
Yeah. So what was surprising to me, because on the paper, the competitors, at least Global Foundry, on the paper, it sounded like a very interesting company. They were, they had a lot of money, they can spend a lot of money, and it is in New York, so I was like, and they were working with IBM at that time. So everything seemed really interesting. But then when I got there, there was a lack of discipline, and I missed that part. And, so I thought, wow, I'm in this company and there is no discipline from, between the engineers, they're trying to solve the problems. They seem to be chaotic.
Okay.
And that part, I said, okay, maybe it's time for me to go back to Intel. At least I know the culture, I know what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah, I've been through the same thing professionally as well. So I find that very interesting. So what would you say is what you like most about working for Intel for you personally?
For me, is I see different problems. So like every single day, I think that is a question that somebody, or you ask Lois about what is your day, or Jack, what is your day like?
Mhm.
For me, just getting up, not even knowing what kind of problem I'm going to face.
Okay.
You know, so it is very exciting because I can just log on the computer and I'm like, okay, last night we ran this set of wafers. What kind of problem? So I start looking at the data and I'm like, okay, it looks like this is not going to be solved this way. Now I need to come up with a new solutions.
Mhm.
And also the other part is really the team. I have the support of the managers. I work with great engineers, and I can ask questions to different team. I can contact integration. I can ask a friend. I have few friends in Edge. I can ask them the question. I have this idea. What do you think? Is it going to work? Can you edge it out? Is this a good film for you? Right. So that kind of collaboration, I really enjoy.
Awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and roll into our panel discussion. So I'm gonna take down my slides, but Francis, since you were the last person I asked some questions to, I'm gonna give you the first panel question that I have that I think will be interesting, considering your current role. So my question is, how did COVID-19 affect the way you do your job, if at all? Because I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, it did. So I'm a hands-on guy. So I like to go inside the fab and sometimes just listen to the tool, how it is interacting with the wafer, how it's, I like to spend time with the technicians.
Mhm.
And with COVID, for a while, at least for 8 months, I used to go every single day, and I will go inside the fab. And until people start telling me, why are you going there? You can do most of the work from home.
Mhm.
So I miss that part. I miss really interacting with the technician. As of the work itself, I think what I do can be done because I can pull most of my data from home. I can look at the data. I can make decisions upfront, and also I meet with the team early in the morning and then late in the evening. So we always have some good collaboration.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so I'm going to do some round robin. I'm going to try to get everybody involved in these panel questions. And to our candidates, this is also your opportunity to get some questions in before, we've got about 20 minutes. So I want to have a live, Q&A and get some good questions in to the folks that have volunteered their time from Intel. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat, and then I'll ask your questions along with my own. So the first question I see is from Nicole in the chat, and that is, what is the work-life balance like at Intel? And I'm going to default this to our first speaker, Lois.
Okay, so yeah, good question. So one thing that I've learned, and I think some people do talk about this, is that Intel will take as much time as you give, but for me, at least, like from my own experience, like the work-life balance is something that I have sort of learned over time. When I started, I was coming straight out of school, and I was used to working all the time because I was in graduate, so I was a graduate student, right? But at some point, I had to really decide, how, what does that balance actually? Number one, what does balance really mean for you? And it's different for everyone. So, at Intel, you do have your vacations, right? That, you should take, and you need to make sure that, while we're doing great work, right, you're also taking time to rest and to take a break, and we are encouraged to do that. And sometimes we do have days that are long because sometimes you have really challenging problems, and usually in order to make up for that, we usually would take some days off just to be able to rest and recoup. So that is something that is encouraged, that we ensure that we are able to balance. And this is something that also now with COVID, it's been a very challenging time, and we're mostly working from home. We are also getting, I think what Intel is doing as an organization is to ensure that people are getting some time, because it's been a difficult time for everyone, to give you we're actually getting additional days off, which we call wellness days, to just help people so that they can continue to strike that balance, especially considering that you've got an additional challenge that you have with COVID. So it is something that I think, might mean different things. The balance, means different things to different people, but, we do have, flexibility to ensure that you're able to balance, your life and your work so that those two things can exist in harmony.
Excellent.
Yeah, is it okay if I add an
Yes,
extra comment to that?
Please do.
Yeah. So, I think that's, people managing their time, but also the factory runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that can be grueling. And so what we've done also to address the work-life balance, because it's one thing, 10 years ago, we just ran a development line. Now we're doing manufacturing. If you run 10 times more wafers, 10 times more tools, the amount of problems multiplies by that same proportion. So we are actually moving full speed ahead with staffing engineering 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's actually, covering the fab itself. And that should also, aid in helping the work-life balance.
Awesome. So when you mentioned factory, to all of our candidates out there, so Intel is doing manufacturing of their different hardware technologies, right? So to our panelists, if you can name off, and this is just an open question to our panelists, if you can name off some products, some resulting products that are produced out of this manufacturing at Intel that we might recognize.
Well, I think every chip, almost every computer at the store you see is made by us.
Okay.
Right. And so if you look at the data centers and you think of the cloud, probably about 95% of the chips are actually Intel. So those are the Xeon chips.
Okay.
Right. Then you have, the Tiger Lake, which is our mobile chip today. That's if you go to the store, buy a laptop, it's going to be Tiger Lake. That's the one that has the new SuperFin process. And then we actually just demonstrated this brand new chip that'll be introduced next year for, supercomputers. And what's quite amazing is that we pack a petaflop worth of computational power. So that's, you think about a gigaflop is a billion. And back in 96, it took 10,000 computers to put a teraflop together. This is 1,000 teraflops all in basically one package today. So that's that's the stunning advance. And I think what's exciting is all these advances, you can say, hey, I built the transistor here, but you can go to the store and say, wow, my parents' computer, I built, the interconnect, and it's neat to say, this is my contribution to the world.
Awesome. So let me ask another question, and this one I'll default to Marcus or Francis, and that is, so we have a lot of diverse candidates that are tuned in to learn more about Intel. And, sometimes people wonder when they're thinking about making the jump from, one company to the next company, they wonder about the culture. And so my question is, do you feel that you can be yourself culturally as a minority at Intel?
Yeah, I'll take that before if Francis has something to chip in.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, I'm an African, so basically culturally, as a Ghanaian, one of the things I was raised by my grandmother was you need to respect everyone, right? You need to be open to people's ideas and not basically shut it down. And at Intel, that is highly encouraged, right? That there's always my managers are always pushing me that, hey, you need to be able to speak up, right? If you have an idea, because we want your idea, that's why you are here, right? So it's really encouraged that so it's not a matter of your cultural background, right? It's besides that, it's also being able to speak your mind and be able to be yourself. Because if you're not yourself, then whatever you're trying to put out, like you're not going to be at your 100%. So Intel really encourages that. Outside of the technical side, there's also different groups at Intel that are open to accept you no matter what you are. Like Lois, she said that there are a lot of Georgia Tech people. There are a lot of UF people for me at Intel who were all accepting. There are a lot of Ghanaians. So there are so many diverse groups that Intel actually encourages that those groups to be available, and those are avenues for you to be able to find a place or a niche that you feel comfortable in.
Awesome. So let me ask the next question. Did you
Can
want
I-
to ask something? Yes.
Yeah, I think that for minorities, I think we have a lot of organization within Intel that support each other, right? For instance, for African American, there is NIA, and it has a support not only for from only the Black community itself, but also from higher up managers, right? So I'm talking about senior managers, and those organizations typically they are good place to network, also to reach out to some people if you have questions or you have career aspiration that you would like to entertain. So and by the way, when it's through NIA when I was looking for an opportunity to do a supply chain job, is through NIA that I was able to get it, right? So I was able to contact some of the senior guys there and then ask them a question about, I'm looking for a job in supply chain, and then they connected me.
That was actually going to be my next question for you, Francis. So let's go ahead and lead into that, and then anyone else on the panel, feel free to add to it. But my next question was going to be, do you have the opportunity at Intel to own your own career and guide your own career? So that was my question for you.
Yeah, so it's when we say that you need to own your own career, I think we mean it. So the at least for me, right, when you start at Intel, you need, as Jack said, you need to know what you are good at, right? You need to know what you are passionate about. And once you know what you are passionate about it, then you can drive your own career. So at the beginning, just you need to be to show some willingness to be coached, to be supervised, and once you demonstrate some of that willingness, and then you need to learn. Maybe you need also to do your job and demonstrate that you can deliver results. Because at the end of the day, we are getting paid to solve problems, right? So you need to know, the problem you are solving and how you are impacting, and you just build yourself, build your reputation with time by doing, by demonstrating the results that you need. And, and when you are new, the other critical aspect of it is you need to master your the routines, the requirements that, for instance, if you are working in the fab, how do you pull data? How do you review data? How can you make decisions fast? How do you run a DOE, right? So you get trained, you will get trained. We have classes. We have, excuse me.
No worries.
Excuse me.
No worries.
Okay, thank you. So I'm really sorry.
No worries.
So that is basically, to me, the kind of skill set you need at least to establish yourself And then as you are growing, you are getting more opportunities to showcase your skill set and your talent.
Awesome. Let me ask, and I'm sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Is it okay if I add something?
Yes.
Yeah, one of the things I've been trying to mentor, the younger engineers in our company is, remember, what we do involves, billions and billions of dollars. And, I advise people, the day you can tell me, hey, I can come up with a new idea, think about being in school. If you can come up with a project that adds value to Intel and say, I need $10 million, sure, we'll get you $10 million. So, at some point when you realize, hey, you can actually just come up with, your own ideas and drive your own career. That's entirely possible, but it takes a little bit of confidence to say, hey, I'm actually going to act on my idea. Because, the most common thing is, oh, I had that idea, but I didn't do anything about it, right?
Yep.
And so I've always been telling people, like, if you want to meet with me every 6 months, bounce ideas off, I can tell, I can give you feedback. And I'm trying to, get, my new group of engineers to say, hey, who wants to take charge of their career? And that's all within the realm of possibility within our organization, because we are big enough to support that.
Awesome. I saw a question from one of our candidates, Azua, that said, how does Intel help support new ideas and innovation? And it seems like you were touching on that just now, Jack.
Because remember, to continue scaling the way we do, it's essentially 100% invention, right? And so if someone comes and says, hey, I have an idea, I mean, more power to you, right? Go for it. I think what we suffer from is probably not enough ideas. So, it's really, beholden on the engineers to, if they want mentorship, I always tell everybody, come by, talk to me, right? We can build a program, figure out, some new technology. But, what we do is crazy hard. You think about a transistor today, we're literally splitting, not quite splitting atoms, but we are in the atomic realm now.
So I saw another good question from Danilo Pizzotti in the chat that said, what is Intel doing as a company to mitigate the semiconductor shortage and ensure production? So I'm wondering, does that trickle down to the individual engineer or even engineering managers or some of the folks on our panel? Does that trickle down to you, some of these issues around chip shortages? Now, I imagine that some of it does affect you, like when you're dealing with vendors and that kind of thing. So if anyone might volunteer, to talk about how that's affected you and maybe some of the things that you all are empowered to work on to solve that.
Well, I can tell you, it's like a freight train. There's the chip shortage, and every month they're saying, hey, can we squeeze out 1,000 extra wafers, right? And, we're going to bring in more tools. We actually announced 2 factories in Arizona that's going to support, the semiconductor manufacturing, but, the whole industry. This is really a 10-year super cycle, and it affects every single engineer because, we're going to try to cram more wafers. We have to try to install more tools, but everybody, it's one big team effort, and we're all racing to add capacity. Just like, during the COVID, how can we squeeze out more N95 masks? Right now, it's really all about how can we squeeze out every last chip, and it affects everybody.
Is there a Intel location in California, correct?
There's a mask shop. But we have company headquarters, we certainly have design centers scattered, all over the country. But in terms of, mask shop, our main mask shop is in California. So that is a option if you looking for, fabrication work.
So I saw a question from Tony in the comments that asked if there were hardware engineering management opportunities in the California location, potentially.
Well, certainly. Yeah. And then we have Folsom location, there's Santa Clara. So, remember, up in Oregon, that's really the center of the chip manufacturing. But think about, all the integration of the chip into the data centers, all the hardware that goes along with it. That's an ecosystem, that we have centers all over the country. We have ASIC designs, we have, motherboard designs, pretty much anything related to computer.
Awesome. So let me circle back to Lois. And Lois, so this next question is around, once you were hired on to Intel, did you seek out a mentor? And then in the current position that you're in now, do you mentor any other employees?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I did. I guess that's the answer there. So when I started initially, I had my initial mentors were really mostly peer mentors. So these were mostly some of my connections from Georgia Tech. So they helped me navigate since they had the same experience. They were fairly new as well, so they knew sort of some of the challenges that you face as a new employee. Then at the same time, I also had an assigned mentor. So this was somebody that was assigned in the group that I was working in. So they're more focused on helping me with the training that I was getting. So it was more of a technical mentorship and helping me navigate the day-to-day work that I was doing. But sort of in addition to that, though, as I was growing, I was also connected with NIA, which is the ERM group that works with people of African ancestry. And through that, I also was able to get connected with the mentors from the Black Leadership Council. So this is the Black Leadership Council Intel. These are Black employees that are of higher grade level. So they're principal engineers. So they're pretty much advancing their careers. So I also did get some mentorship there. And with that, I was mostly looking at, career growth, what my options really are. And also, so I also work actually under Jack. So Jack is my manager. So he's also has played a very critical role in helping me navigate my career in WedEdge. So when Jack does say that he's available to mentor engineers, it's really like he does make the time to connect with engineers. And then I also, so in terms of what I do, I also and I also plug in that at Intel we do have a formal mentoring program. So this is through our career connections, where you're able to find mentors on our global network. So these mentors can be anywhere; they don't have to be in your current location. And people do sign up to be mentors there for different aspects. They can be maybe a new employee. They can sign up to be, for sports coaching or sport mentoring. So it can be long-term or short-term, based really on what you need. So when people are looking for mentorship, there are resources that are available. But also at the same time, so in our teams that we work in, generally, I think people are very open. And if you really do need mentorship, do need a mentor, it's very easy to reach out to the people around you in our groups. And I've never really had a point where someone said no. So I think it's really a matter of asking and reaching out to the people that are around you that you think will be motivating. And one thing that I would say also is that I think it's very important to have mentors, because they do play a very critical role in helping you, navigate or think through some opportunities that you probably wouldn't have think would be good for you. And so currently now, because I do have a team that I manage, so I mentor, those are my direct reports, but I also do mentor other engineers. So I do set up, some of them I meet with them on a quarterly basis, some I meet with them on a monthly basis, really based on what they need. But mentoring is something that I'm really passionate about, because I think it's very important. A lot of people have helped me throughout my entire career, so it's something that I'm always really happy to do as well.
Awesome. So we've got Marcus, Francis, and Lois, and we're getting ready to go into, I'm going to introduce Sept Morales to talk about next steps. But before we go into that, Marcus, Francis, and Lois, if you could give a quick words of advice for our candidates, what would they be, considering that they're diverse candidates? So Marcus, I'll let you go first.
Okay. The main advice would be, I think the theme that we get, or we've been pushing, is that you have to be passionate about what you want to do. So at Intel, that is what, if you don't have a passion, then that's you wouldn't be, the problems you are solving are extremely difficult. So if you don't have a passion about it, then you won't be interested in what you're doing. Your solutions are not going to be robust. So my advice is, first, be very goal driven about what you want to do. Set your goals as, okay, if I'm getting to Intel, what do I want to achieve? You know, I think, you know, the most cliche question is what, you know, you want to see yourself in the next 5 years, the next 10 years and all of that. As much as it's cliche, but it's basically sets you up to know what you want, and you check in with yourself how much progress you are making, right? If you don't have that progress, then you either have to go back to the drawing board and make changes, or decide what you want to do next. You know, the next thing will be, you know, be able to communicate what you need clearly, right? To be able to say what you want. You know, once you get in, you find a mentor. You know, you have your goals. So your first source of mentorship is basically your manager, right? Like Lois mentioned, she meets with her engineers, and you know, they discuss their career goals and all of that. So you want to be very clear about that also. I have that with my manager, where, you know, you know, she tells me, okay, these are the paths that you have. Where do you want to go? And, you know, I tell, okay, this is where I want to go because of ABCD, right? This is my passion. I'm a problem solver, so I want to be more of, you know, in the technical field to solve the problems that we have. And, you know, the last thing is, you know, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, so you have to be able to adapt easily. The semiconductor industry is changing very fast, right? With each node, things are coming in, different requests, like, you know, there is a demand, and you need to be able to adapt with the changing times so that you always make yourself marketable.
Awesome. Francis, what would your words of advice be for our candidates?
I think for me would be, excuse me, I will say you need to be, of course, you need to enjoy what you are doing, but also you need to understand your customer, the internal and the external, what your customer want and what they are expecting out of you, and try to deliver result. And the other parameter that now is becoming critical is the time. So don't always seek for the perfect solution, but just try to fix the problem as much as you can and learn from it, and then get things moving instead of just holding on the solution and trying to find the ultimate solution.
Right, perfection. I think that's awesome advice, not only for career, but for life in general. Lois, do you have any advice you'd like to offer the candidates?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my advice would be that, you know, as you navigate your career, to also be open-minded, and because sometimes you really never know, you know, where you are going to end up and what you end up doing, which could actually be something that's completely outside of your field of study. So be open-minded and definitely seek mentoring and coaching to help you navigate through your career.
Awesome. And so, Jack, I'll give you the last word before I introduce Sept. And Jack, if you could reiterate opportunities for experienced folks, and even folks that might be executives, directors, or managers that are in the audience as well. But any words of advice? I think you're on mute. You're on mute currently. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think number one, you know, if you're looking for new opportunities, they might be different than what you expect. And so, you know, my recommendation is really keep an open mind, because I have too many people that say, I want A, B, C, D, you know, and all these too many requirements to the point where we have no job that exists that satisfies every single one, right? So I think be open. You know, you have a skill set, and, you know, obviously you have valuable experience from so many years, but also, you know, be receptive to, you know, new things, because no job is going to be, you know, exactly, you know, what you imagine. You know, you might find some new adventures, right? But, you know, be open. That's my recommendation.
Awesome. Okay, so let me, in this next part of our event, we're about to close out, but I want to do two things. I want to introduce Sept Morales to talk about next steps in case you're interested in an interview. And I saw a lot of questions about, are there opportunities for experienced professionals that have like 10 plus years of experience? And the short answer is yes. Intel actually specifically asked HBCU Connect to reach out and invite very experienced candidates with lots of, on the job experience and also education from, PhD, master's, and bachelor's level candidates. So the answer is yes, and that's why we have invited you to this event. But Josetta, if you're ready to go over next steps, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Will. So hi, everyone. My name is Josetta Morales. I'm an HR business partner in the Technology Development Group, and it's so nice to be here with all of you today. Okay, so for next steps, first off, thank you to all of you who have already submitted your resumes. We will be getting those in front of our technology development hiring managers shortly after this event. And then if you haven't already done so, we encourage you to fill out our talent form. And Will, if you could go to the next slide, thank you. So you can access the talent form by using your phone to scan the QR code here. We can also drop the link in the chat, and then you'll be sent the link via email after this event. So within the talent form, you can upload your resume and create a profile. And what that does is it puts you in Intel's database, so it makes your information visible to recruiters across Intel. And then we also encourage you to visit jobs.intel.com. There you can do a keyword search to find positions, open positions that you're interested in. And we're hiring at all levels, from interns, college grads, entry level, all the way through to experienced. And then also I encourage you to stay connected with us via social media. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we also have a YouTube channel, and to stay up to date with all of the exciting things that are happening at Intel. Lastly, thank you to today's speaker and panelist, and to HBCU Connect for supporting this event, and to all of the participants for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the event and learned something new about Intel. Thanks, everyone.
Josetta, you might want to be careful. You may take my job. That was picture perfect. So to all of our candidates, let me ask you to go ahead and turn on your video feed. I want to get a group shot of all of your smiling faces if you are prepared for it. I think that would be awesome. And while we're doing that, like while you spruce up to be able to turn on your video feed, let me thank again the Intel team for taking the time out. I know this is after hours for some of you, but thank you for taking the time out to share your experiences and what it's like to work at Intel and all of this valuable information, and making yourself available to this group of candidates. And to our candidates, let me thank you, first of all, for attending, because without you, we cannot do these types of events. So let me thank all of our candidates for joining us. And let's go ahead and get this quick video shot. So if everybody can go ahead, let me turn off my my screen share, and then I'll get a quick shot of all of your smiling faces. Okay, you guys are ready? Let's go ahead and do this. All right, everybody say cheese. All right, awesome, awesome. So again, let me thank you all for joining us. Make sure to take advantage of networking with the folks that you have met this evening at Intel. Reach out via LinkedIn. Make sure we have your latest resume at HBCU Connect just by going to hbcuconnect.com/Intel-MFG for manufacturing. So, or just respond back to the email with your latest resume, and we'll make sure to share that with the team at Intel. But thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you. And thanks again to the Intel team. And we'll see you at the next event. We have one more event, which will be part 3 with a slightly different team with more opportunities. So stay tuned for that as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.